We developed a technique that linked respiration rate and body temperature to a visible scoring system, which we've called the pantingScore. So the cattle go through a number of stages under heat stress, and obviously under no heat stress they have a pantingScore of 0. And in that situation, if you look at a pen of cattle in a feedlot, you'd have difficulty actually seeing them breathing. So they're basically very, very relaxed. They then go up to pantingScore 1, and under pantingScore 1, there's no open mouth panting or anything like that, but you can actually see the animals breathing. So if you actually look at them, you can see flank movements, and so you say, okay, well, that's the first sign the animals are starting to build up an internal heat load, but they're basically coping. The next point is pantingScore 2, and that's where the animals now starting to have some difficulty in actually coping with the environmental conditions. So respiration rate is elevated, and it might be now up to the vicinity of around 90 to 100 breaths per minute. There's a lot of drooling from the animal, but there's no open mouth panting again. From pantingScore 2, we go to pantingScore 3, and at pantingScore 3, the animal now has open mouth panting, a lot of drool. Respiration rates can now be up around 120 plus, and those animals are now really starting to become severely stressed. There's going to be some obvious production problems with those animals in terms of reduced feed intake, poorer performance, and those sort of things. pantingScore 3 is a critical point. At pantingScore 3, an animal can go either way very quickly. So they can go to a much higher pantingScore, which means under a lot more stress, or they can go back to a lower pantingScore if sort of the environmental conditions abate and things cool off a bit. One of the things we see with cattle is that they, when they get really high respiration rates, that they do need to correct for basically the breathing changes. So they have this really shallow, fast breathing, and you can really see the lungs or the ribs moving very quickly. There's some physiological problems that are associated with that, but basically not taking enough oxygen in, so they need to correct that. And one of the things they do is they'll change to this deeper breathing phase, and they'll have the head up, the mouth will be open, and they usually extend their neck out to be able to suck as much air in as possible. And they actually start breathing more from the flank, so you actually see them pushing from behind and trying to draw in as much air as they can. So respiration rate may actually decrease. So you might see an animal that's got a respiration rate of 140, 145, and it might drop down to 100. And when you first see that, you may think, well, the animal's actually starting to recover. But the reality is that animal's actually getting worse when they shift into that deeper phase breathing. And as soon as they do that, respiration rate does go down, and the consequence of that is that they're not shedding as much heat. So they then start to increase body temperature, which basically then leads into the next phase of the pantingScores, which is the 3.5 and the 4. So the 3.5 is where the mouth's open all the time, tongue's out, and those animals are really starting to struggle. They're still at a point, though, where they are coping, sort of, with the conditions. When they go to pantingScore 4, that's, again, a very critical component. Again, we may see a reduction in respiration rate on those animals, but you also see a change in the appearance of the animals where they tend to drop their head, and their ability to breathe in enough oxygen and keep up the high respiration rate, which they had earlier in the day, are decreased. So they're not coping. And those animals are the ones that are highly susceptible to death, basically. So once they get to pantingScore 4, the animals themselves are in severe distress.